Hey there, this is Blake from UK Entomology, and this video is about one of our State Fair 4-H entomology projects. This one's going to be focusing on the photography collection. So there are a couple of different State Fair and County Fair 4-H entomology projects that youth can do. One of them is the pinned project, where you actually go collect insects and pin them. But this is the photography version. It's kind of a virtual insect collection made with photographs. This is a really good option for people who maybe aren't comfortable working with and killing real insects. And it's also a good option for people who want to learn more about macrophotography. We'll talk about what that means in a little bit. And it's also a way to learn a little bit about how to handle and manipulate digital images. So what we're talking about here is lot 6026, class 687B. So 4-H agents know what lots and classes are. And this is the photo option for the first year insect collection. So for the first year collection, a 4-H'er is going to turn in between 25 and 50 images. So they have to have at least 25 and then up to 50. And then you get more points if you get closer to that 50 number. The 4-H'er will need to include at least 4 insect orders represented out of those 25 or 50 images. We have about 25 orders of insects in Kentucky, and those are the different groups of insects, like beetles is an order, and butterflies and moths is an order. 4 is the minimum, but you get a lot more points when you include more than the minimum orders. So we highly encourage 4-H'ers to include more than those 4 minimum orders. The photos must be taken by the 4-H'er, and the photos mostly need to be from Kentucky and within the previous year of when the project is turned in. And then for this project, we're really focusing on adult stage insects. So we don't want insect larvae. The second year project actually includes some larvae and other life stages. And then something else that you can include as part of this project, if you make sure to go through the guidelines and do it correctly, is that you can include non-insect arthropods as well. So you can include things like adult spiders and centipedes and millipedes. Just got to make sure to identify them correctly for the project. So just a little bit about what is macrophotography. We'll use that term several times today, and sometimes we shorten that and just say macro. Macrophotography just means taking pictures of very small things. So macrophotography means that you have some kind of a magnification device on your phone or your other camera, and you take pictures of things like flowers, rocks, or insects. And of course, this project focuses on insects, but the techniques that you learn about macrophotography in this project also apply to other small items that you might want to take pictures of as well. Here's an example picture of the kind of thing that 4-H'ers will be turning in. We'll talk about the specifics of what needs to go into one of these images here in a moment. But you can see that the idea is to go outside, get up close to insects, take nice pictures of them, take the picture back to a computer, edit it a little bit, and then you'll see down here, this is a very important step. We need to include a notation tag on each of the images. So this is kind of like the tags that go on the pinned insects. And this is important because it turns this project from a photography project or an art project into science. We take data here by noting the date and the place where the creature was collected. That's useful because if a scientist in the future sees one of these images and wants to know where this creature was taken, maybe it's a rare creature or something, they can look at that notation data and it will tell them something about it. So the materials that you need for this project, we've tried to keep it really simple. The main thing that you need is some kind of a digital camera or a cell phone camera. You could do almost this whole project with just a cell phone camera and some kind of a computer to edit the images. And then some other things that you might want to have. And by the way, almost any fairly modern cell phone camera, maybe from the last 3 to 5 years, will probably be very capable of taking the kinds of pictures that you need for this project. And then handheld digital cameras are great too. If you have a 4-H'er who wants to use a nicer camera, like one of the big SLR cameras that have detachable lenses. Those are great too, but you don't have to have something that fancy for this project. Another thing that you can use, especially if you're using a cell phone camera, is something called an attachable macro lens, and I'll show what those are in a minute. That's like a $10 to $15 device that allows you to get closer to your insects, especially if you're using a cell phone. Handheld digital cameras will tend to have that feature built in. You'll also need the rules and guides, and that website is right there, and you'll also see that website hopefully on most of the slides at the bottom. That will take you to the guides that you need for this project. You'll also need a computer with some kind of photo editing software. So most of our agents and extension offices will have some kind of a computer that 4-Hers can use. And the photo editing software doesn't have to be anything fancy either. Most PC computers will have a program called Paint on it. It's also sometimes called MS Paint or Paint 3D, and that will allow you to do everything that you need to do for this project. But you can also use fancier programs like Photoshop, or there's a free program that you can download off the internet called GIMP that allows you to do a whole lot of things too. But I use Microsoft Paint most of the time for this. And then you need a sunny day with bugs. You really need to go outside, find places where bugs are moving around so that you have lots of good opportunities to take good pictures. Just very quickly, this is a couple of documents that are on that website. On the left side there, you'll see a page from our document that goes into great detail about this project. It's many pages long. It's got a whole lot of information in it. I wouldn't encourage anyone to sit down and try to read it, but it is a good reference for tips on how to take pictures, all the little different rules that you need to do. All of these 4-H projects, of course, have sometimes very particular rules, so all those are in there. And then on the right side, this is linked on our page too. This is a quick start sheet. This is just a front and back sheet designed especially for first year 4-Hers who are doing this project. It gives just the very basics that you need to get started with the project. So it's a really good thing to hand out or to start out with if you're a 4-Her. So a couple of things about the specifics that you will need for your images. Each image has to have a couple of things in it to qualify for the project. For one thing, each image has to be an exact size, and there's reasons that we did this. Each image needs to be 1920 pixels wide and 1080 pixels tall. And when you get onto Microsoft Paint or some other photo editing software, you can resize your images very easily. The image size is important because we want to show these images on the state fair televisions, and they need to be the proper size to do that, and that 1920 by 1080 size is the exact dimensions of a high definition television. Also, that size, that 1920 by 1080, also happens to be the standard size used for many photography competitions, so digital photography competitions. So it's just kind of a standard size that's used for things like this. Another thing that we want each image to have, so every image, is this white notation box. So that's what this thing is, and this is a magnification of it. So we'll draw our magnification lines here. There are some things that need to be in there. For one thing, it needs to be a white box that's just sort of cut out of the image, which is pretty easy to do on photo editing software. The size of the box is not terribly important, but typically about 400 pixels wide by about 225 pixels tall, but it can be a little bigger than that if you need to, depending on how much information you need to put in it. But some things that you have to have are the last name of the 4-Her, their county, the lot, and the class number. That allows us to identify what competition it's part of. You also need the date and the place. The place can be an address, or it can be something like GPS coordinates. We also want the kind of phone or camera that's used. A little bit about the settings. So you can see there we used macro setting, built-in lens. We didn't use a flash on this image. And then this is also where the identification information goes. So you'll put your order name and the common name of the creature there. And that guide that we showed a second ago that's linked to our website goes into a great detail about all the stuff that you need in that notation box. A little bit about macro lenses. So we've got a couple of different macro options shown here. I'll start with this one in the middle. This is what you will find on many handheld digital cameras. So handheld digital cameras, these are the ones that kind of look like those disposable snap and shoot cameras, except they're fully digital. You can get really nice ones for $100 or $150. Most of these have a built-in macro setting. You see that red circle, the smaller red circle with the flower in it. So when you're taking pictures with one of these handheld digital cameras, switch it over to that flower setting, and that sort of gets the camera ready to take pictures up close. Handheld digital camera is a really good option if you have one. They tend to be a little bit easier to use than cell phones. It's also sometimes easier to move the images from a handheld digital camera to a computer than between your phone and your computer. But otherwise, there's really not a whole lot of benefit or difference between the kind of quality of images you get between a handheld digital camera or a cell phone. We just encourage people to use whichever one is available to them. And you'll also see some attachable macro lenses for phones. So this one over here on the left, this one's called Easy Macro. It is actually a rubber band. It's actually a very simple device. It's a rubber band with a magnifying glass built onto it that simply goes over the camera of your cell phone. We like this model because it fits almost every kind of phone model or brand that there is out there, whether it's an Apple or a Samsung or some other kind of Android. That rubber band allows it to fit just about anywhere. If you look at these different phones, you'll see that their cameras are in different places. Sometimes the camera is right up there on the edge, like you can see on this one, but sometimes the camera might be way down in the middle, and some of these clip-on versions won't work. So the rubber band ones are a good place to start. But if you can find one that matches your phone, we really like these clip-on versions. So over here we see two different clip-on versions. You can find these clip-on versions sometimes for less than $10, and they work really well. They just clip right over your lens, and they just magnify the image so that you can get really close to your bugs. But one thing that's a new kind of device that has come out in the last couple of years is very similar to the clip-on ones, except it also has lights built into it. There's actually lots of different models and brands of these, but they do the same thing that the clip-on macro lens does, except it also has an LED light. This is really nice because if you're in a dark area and you want to take a picture of an insect, it's good for that. Also, if you're in a sunny area, your phone creates its own shadow. So the light helps to eliminate that and allows you to get really up close to the bug. You turn that light on and you can sometimes get really nice pictures. I've seen these for around $11. So if you can find one that fits your model of phone, I highly encourage to get one of those with a light on it. Just a little bit about where to find bugs for photos, really just anywhere that you've ever seen bugs before, yards, farms. There's so many great places to find bugs. One rule of thumb is we need sunlight, we need warmth, and we need lots of plants. So some places would just be a yard with lots of nice weeds growing in it, with flowers on a sunny day. Something along the edge of a fence row might have even taller weeds, so weedy places with sun and flowers is a good spot. One of my favorite places is to find a pond or a lake that has lots of weeds growing next to it, and maybe some trees as well. That way you get the water that attracts things like dragonflies, and so you get a lot of diversity, a lot of opportunities to take pictures there. The weedy, scraggly areas next to old barns are really good places to find bugs for pictures. And home gardens. Home gardens are great because there's lots of different kinds of plants there that both predators and herbivores, so your pests, are going to be attacking those things and visiting those things. So you can go in and get lots of different pictures there. So scouting your garden for bugs is a great place to find lots of images. So the way that this project is turned in, so it's a totally digital project. Each image is turned in as a JPEG file, and then that is all turned in a folder. So this is what your folder might look like. This is what the 4-Hers folder might look like. So the folder is named after the 4-Hers last name, the county, and then the lot and the class number. And then each image just has the last name of the 4-Her, the county, and then numbered 1 through 25 or 1 through 50. The numbers on these are arbitrary. It's just a way to make sure we know that each image has its own number. and then you turn it all in like that on a USB thumb drive or some other kind of USB drive. Um, it doesn't matter too much what kind of device it is, just as long as it's something that we can plug into our computer at state fairs so we can look at these images and quickly judge them. On the thumb drive itself, you do need to put again, the last name of the 4-H'er, the county, the lot, and the class. And one nice thing about this is that for so many of our 4-H projects, you have to carry these big crates and boxes around, but this is a project that can go in the 4-H agent's backpack or back pocket. Easy to lose, but as long as you keep track of it, at least it's lightweight and small. So that's it for an introduction. We're going to do some more videos on this topic in the future. We're going to have some videos on tips for how to take better pictures of insects, how to use those macro lenses, how to go outside and find insects. A lot of that stuff is in the guides too that we showed you. We're also going to do videos on identification, and those videos will also be useful for the pinned insect project. And then we want to do one video just on how to digitally manipulate the images. That's a very nice process. One of the things we've learned doing this with both 4-H'ers and adult leaders is that taking pictures of the insects is pretty easy. People are able to take pretty good pictures of insects without a whole lot of training. But taking it back and editing it, so cropping it, resizing it, and then putting those labels on there can be a little bit challenging. So we're going to do a whole video on just that topic. So we really appreciate you tuning in and look for future videos on this topic.